The birth of this channel did not come easily. It's been tormenting me for several months, maybe actually even a year. Like a blank piece of paper, just wondering what is the first sentence that goes on it, or the first words that cover its page. I have no amazing platform. As of now, I have 0 subscribers. I just feel like this is a call to put this out there. It may be the rantings of a crazy man. Maybe insights that feed one person. But for those of you who will listen, I'll share what's on my heart. My journey started a long time ago. It was a day much like today, wet and rainy. And my buddy and I were headed to a concert that night. He wasn't the best driver and always drove fast, and we were going around a corner at way too high of a speed during rush hour, and we slid into the other lane, oncoming traffic. As I braced to hold myself during impact, which would have been futile anyway, I saw a large vehicle directly in front of us. Quickly thought this could be the end. 2 seconds later, we're stopped against a telephone pole after hopping a curb. He and I both completely astonished at what happened, and me a little unsure of how it happened. It's crazy to explain, but somehow we went through that first car as if the car didn't even know we were there. We slid across that lane of traffic and then boomeranged back to the other lane, hopped the curb, and slammed into a telephone pole. This wasn't he and I's first accident together. The first time he ripped out the underside of his car, hopping a curb, not being able to stop in time at a corner, and this was very similar. However, when we got out to inspect the vehicle, there was 0 damage to it. Underneath, in front, where we'd hit the telephone pole, where we'd gone through the car, and just a miracle that I was alive, that he was alive, that the car was completely fine. We drove to that concert that night, and the artist speaking said, "You're here for a reason. You're not on this earth by accident. There was a plan for you." And back then, spring of 1989, I knew that there was something special that I was supposed to do, and I would go on to get an engineering degree and refuse to listen if I had a call to go into full-time ministry. God would bless me anyway, as He gave me a job at the first place I sent a resume to. Dream job, designing Hondas and Acuras. I was 21, fresh out of college. Despite my church upbringing, I started not going to church on Sundays, and a couple years went by. My wife started to work with youth and finally roped me in, and it was February 13th of 1998. We had a guest speaker at our church, and he called me down from the sound booth where I was working, called me on stage and proceeded to tell me that God had big plans for me and that I was supposed to work big things for Him. Of course, that was quite shocking. Amazing that it was, nearly 10 years after my high school experience. And then May of 1999, I was sitting in an arena with 60,000 people, as quiet as worship was just going on around me, and I felt like God gave me a vision at that point. Two rivers, a clean river and a black river, and that clean river represented the church and its safety and its cleanliness and smallness, and the black river represented the world and its massive darkness. And there were entertainers in there, and I would go in and warn the people of the waterfall that lay ahead, and the entertainers didn't care for that too much, but eventually beams of light would shine up from the riverbed as people would be able to see what was happening and would be free from the grasp of the entertainers. And I just felt like that was my call, to go outside of what people would refer to as the church and reach a generation that's mesmerized by other things. And that was another big event. Later that fall, I was in Guatemala on a missions trip, and we were at a thatched hut, tabernacle, they called it, and again, it was a deep time of worship, and I was laying on the floor in a trance-like state, and I felt like for the first time I was able to tell God, use me in however you want. So I'm there, 26 years old, had just turned 26, and for the first time, despite being raised in the church, I was telling God I'd do whatever He wanted, and including be a pastor. And He laughed and said, I don't want you to be a pastor or a missionary. I do want you to lead an organization that will help reach this generation differently, in a new way. And I was like, God, not sure if, what I can do, and I don't know anything. I don't know how to run a company. I'm an engineer by training. He's like, yeah, you may be young like Joshua was relative to Moses, but I'll bless you. You'll still get the cars you like, and you'll still be able to reach people and accomplish much. And so I just kind of wrote that down and kept it to myself. And the next day, the missionary there said, we're going to have prayer time, and he said, I want people to come forward who are willing to do what God wants them to do. And I knew yesterday, I was like, God, if you want me to do this, you're going to have to, give me your power, and because I can't do it myself. I don't know what I'm doing. Sure enough, the missionary said, there's only going to be a couple of you, so don't swarm the altar. And he said, one of you, God's told you that He's going to have you lead a large organization. And that you don't feel like you've got the power to do it on your own, and that if you come up here, He's gonna give you power to do that. And he said, don't worry about the cars, we'll take care of the cars. And it's, how does stuff like that happen? I went on to attend Ohio State University, where I earned my master's in business administration, and So I know how to run a business, know the finances, and know the marketing and accounting and all the other stuff that goes into running a business. A few years after that, I would start my own business in production. And after studying it and understanding and thinking that, okay, maybe we'll reach the generation through media, but I hired a couple of people and we did a couple of hour-long productions for a friend of mine who was working in the Ohio district with the youth, and had great results. You know, we showed those 2 films to over 7,000 teenagers with great results, and forever altered, me and the actors that I had and the volunteers that I had working on that project. Continued on doing some small videos, but didn't really ever get the voice out there that I wanted to, and continued to operate in the church. And 2 years later was forced to shut it down as it wasn't making money and it wasn't doing what I knew God wanted me to do. And 2006, the end of the year, just frustrated with my job, frustrated with progress, frustrated with the loan debt I'd taken out to start the business. I asked God for a job change, a location change, and I don't remember if it was the next day or 2 days later, but the phone rang and said, hey, we've got a job opportunity. We're looking for a guy who knows how to design cars, but we need you to apply it in a different environment. And I'd learned that was referred to as lean product development. My new boss would be a former Toyota guy who'd formed the team, and we together introduced lean product development to GE Healthcare, and had to relocate my family to Wisconsin, Milwaukee area, and very difficult after living in Ohio for 12 years. Tough on our three children who'd only known Ohio as home, and my wife who just got accepted to nursing school at Ohio State. And it was a tough couple of years, and seemed like a dry couple of years. First church we went to, just extremely legalistic and very traditional, and just not what I wanted to be in, and I knew what God wanted me to do. And found another church, and it was much better, and we started attending there, and the kids would go to youth, and eventually I'd go with a small group of men to a communist country in Southeast Asia on a missions trip, and that was an event that was very powerful to me, that I was looking forward to, that I thought would help give me some direction. And now I'm pushing my upper 30s, and wondering where the dream went and how it died so hard, and people still asking me about the previous corporation I'd started and stopped, and if I was still following what I thought God wanted for me. And on that missions trip I thought I'd get the answer, and I never did. The 7 or 10 days we were over there, and just didn't get it. And I think my wife was hoping I'd hear something, and I didn't. But the day I was back, when I took my kids to school, as I was driving home after dropping them off, I felt God very clearly say to me, here's what I want you to do. Here's the lost that I want you to reach, and here's how I want you to do it. And the purity around a discipleship model, and not getting hung up over the term Christian, or getting stuck in the organization that calls themselves the church, but that we as followers of Christ are the church, and that it would just be a pure model based on loving God and loving others and creating disciples. I was asked to speak at a young adult conference a couple months later. That would be January, and Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and there were about 200 attendees, and I felt like God really wanted me to be open to what He wanted. So I was trying to listen to everything, and I've been used in certain ways in the past, by Him with groups of people as I was speaking, but 200 people for 2 days. I felt like He was telling me that I needed to get very personal, and that He was saying, look, Adam, I'm going to do something here for every single person, 100% of them, not 20% or not 10%, all of them, and I'm going to do something so different that it can only be referred to as stupid. And I was just thinking about those 90s movies and TV shows where people would see a UFO or an alien as a kid, and they were so convinced as an adult that aliens existed that no one could tell them otherwise. And that was the image I had for this. And so the term I coined was the birth of stupid. A couple of weeks before the event, I felt God tell me that He wanted to share a word with every single person. And I'd done that before, maybe groups of 10 or 15 people, but never on a scale of 200. And I just started to jot down 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 word things as I was praying for the attendee list, and just felt dumb doing it, but kept writing it out and kept adding people. And second day of the retreat, I had a box, and I printed out everyone's name, and on the back I printed out everyone's phrase. I was very afraid to hand it out for failure, and I opened the box and read off the names and had the people collect them. Then I went to the back of the room and just felt like Elijah and just wanted to go under the tree and die. And I didn't want to know. And the organizer for the event went up on the stage and said, hey, I know Adam downplayed these pieces of paper, but every single one of these sheets of paper is for you individually. And he said 5 or 10 people come up to him since he walked up on the stage saying, how'd he know that? And I didn't know. I just wrote down what I felt God was telling me for that person. And one testimony in particular, this young lady who'd had a rough childhood, and her dad had died. And she'd always was afraid of death. And she just thought there had to be more to life than what she was living. And she came to the event and went to the different sessions and didn't really feel connected, had a good time, but wasn't getting her answer that she was looking for. And the final service and the final prayer time came and went, and she was sitting there at the end, and a friend of hers said, what did your paper say? She goes, I don't know, something dumb like a fortune cookie. And she opened it up, and it said, there's more. And there are countless other stories like that, where God was able to speak to people through me. And so as I sit here and just a mechanical engineer by training, and business guy, and now a consultant in the professional world for healthcare and industrial clients, I make this channel, and I don't know what the future is, but I know there is something out there around the purity of being a Christ follower, around the purity of a message of love, around the purity of who we are, people as the church. And what I want to do on a regular basis is not give you super long messages like this, but to be able to equip you with short thoughts that are coming to me, and maybe it's for you exactly. Maybe it's for several of you. If last year, the simple discipleship model, I just wanted to get 2 other people, and I got 1 other person to commit in a year. So it's 2013 now, and May. So if we could just have a couple of subscribers build up and actively following, that would be great. Maybe you hated church and you're away from it. Maybe go to a church, or maybe don't have any idea what it means to be a follower of Jesus, and the term Christian scares you, and the people who are Christians freak you out, and the church buildings you've gone to have been empty and hollowless, and this is just all about a relationship. And I just feel like the reason I was put on this earth was to help let people know what the church body should be like, and to be able to give you a life-changing moment where you realize that why it is you're here, and the passions that you have within you. And there's a reason that I'm not standing behind a pulpit, and I'm not leading a church, or I'm not in a foreign country, because I'm supposed to be here in the United States doing what I'm doing. And maybe this dumb YouTube channel is something. I'm shooting it on a $400 GoPro camera and editing it on my $1,000 iMac, and nothing fancy, no 3-point light setup, no Final Cut Pro, no $5,000 HD camera, but no, just a message, pure and simple. And maybe I'll broadcast it from this spot, this corner of my office.